The year was 1994, and David Geffen, Steven Spielberg, and Jeffrey Katzenberg had a vision of a multimedia empire known as DreamWorks. It would be 4 short years only until 1998, when DreamWorks would have its true first tentpole year. Instant classics like Small Soldiers, Saving Private Ryan, and The Prince of Egypt would hit the movie theaters. However, one film got lost in the shuffle: a small, forgotten middle child, Ants. With their brand new film catalog, already winning awards at the Academy and smashing box office records, Ants was just the cherry on Jeffrey Katzenberg's milkshake. If you were part of the general movie-going public in 1998, it didn't take a genius to figure out what was going on here. Ants came out the same month as A Bug's Life, an extremely similar-looking animated movie about ants. Jeffrey Katzenberg was fired from Disney in a large, publicized fallout. Ants existed nothing more as Jeffrey Katzenberg's middle finger to Disney, a bootleg of A Bug's Life that beat it to market with even more impressive, realistic animation. Fresh off of the original Toy Story, Pixar was a creative powerhouse. This put Ants in a difficult position. It couldn't stand out next to Bug's Life. Most people saw it as the cinematic equivalent of picking up your girlfriend in a shiny new sports car and then taking circles around her ex's house. While Small Soldiers and Prince of Egypt are remembered as beloved classics of the 90s, I'd like to think there's a bit more to the forgotten middle child called Ants. Maybe it's my sympathy, being a middle child myself, or maybe I relate a bit too much to Woody Allen's character in the film, an anxiety-ridden worker just looking for a place in a world of similar-minded drones. Whereas Bug's Life offers a colorful, vibrant, and fun worldview into the world of bugs, Ants paints the backdrop against us, a middle class of working people, striving to find independence and individuality in a world that seems all the same. The characters resemble the actual insects a lot more. They almost look grotesque in nature, and the characters are all colored just like ants. Everything in the world of Ants is made to look as close to the insect world as possible, which makes for a great juxtaposition, since the characters in the movie behave much more like humans in an everyday world than the fun characters of Bug's Life. Truth be told, the film is much more of a Woody Allen, Sharon Stone rom-com than it is your typical animated road trip adventure, and maybe that's why I like the movie. It's different. And that also may explain why toy companies were hesitant to support the film. When I was going to do a retrospective on collecting ants, I expected to collect all the hallmarks of a great 1990s animated movie. A kid's meal, bed sheets, collectible cups, and tons of knickknacks. Yet the pool of collecting ants merchandise is as small as the insects themselves. Besides a couple of rare promo items, like a magnifying glass, there were a couple of children's books and a coloring book, but nary a school supply or jigsaw puzzle to be found. None of the usual fanfare you'd see for a cartoon. There was a tie-in video game, but it was inexplicably released 4 years after the movie came out. One thing Ants couldn't avoid was the beanie craze. There were 2 collectible beanies from a company called the Idea Factory, and they are delightfully hideous. Okay, so they don't really resemble the characters in the movie that much, but I don't know, I kind of just love how ugly and delightful they are. Like, how else were you going to translate the characters in this film, these designs, into a plush form? It's almost commendable. Besides these few rare items, there was one line of action figures from well-known toy maker Playmates Toys. Considering Hasbro made the Small Soldiers toys that summer, it is a bit unusual that Playmates would make Ants toys. I guess DreamWorks didn't really have their licensing all in order yet. And they only gave us 5 figures. That's right, just 5 figures. There are no playsets, no vehicles, no extra nothing in this line. Just 5 carded figures. Thankfully, they are 5 of the nicest action figures ever made. Simply put, the Ants action figure line is the stuff cartoon and animation fans dream of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start off with the packaging design. The Ants figures come on these glorious, huge blister bubbles, a staple of all great 1990s action figures. Anyone else remember blister cards? I feel like everything comes boxed nowadays or in cardboard. I miss the days of a nice blister card. Honestly, these look just as good on the wall as they do opened. The card backs feature the title of the film with the New York skyline in the backdrop, with the slogan, "Every ant has his day," which is exactly the film's poster. I'm a big fan of movie posters being used on DVD covers, but even cooler when the movie poster is incorporated into the action figure card backs. I actually don't think I've seen something like this. This is an extremely effective and resourceful way to make a card back. And God, how can you not just love that poster of ants? By the way, did you know that DreamWorks actually retconned the poster of ants? Only the original 1999 DVD release uses that poster. All later releases and streaming services just changed it to some lame official art. Is this because the World Trade Center is present in the background? Do we really have to let 9/11 affect the movie about cartoon ants? Okay, that's enough 9/11 talk. Back to ants. As we go down from the city and into the dirt here, we have a magnifying glass showing a close-up of the ant, and that's our figure. It's absolutely brilliant and uses perspective beautifully in the packaging design. Like, yeah, we're seeing the ant up close. That's why the figure is nearly 6 inches tall. Oh yeah, these figures are also pretty big. They're practically Ants Marvel Legends. They honestly have a lot more in common with modern action figures than vintage figures, but we'll get to that when we open them. Each figure is beautifully displayed in the blister bubble. Again, this makes for a great set to keep carded, and it's gonna pain me to rip these open, but I'm an open action figure collector. Toys are meant to be played with. Anyways, moving on to the back of the packaging. Each figure has a short description of the movie. Or, well, as short of a description you could make for a movie about non-conformity in society. Then we get the character's photo and a short description, and a nice advertisement for the other figures, asking us to collect the entire colony. It's an extremely clean design that fills those that don't know the film in on who the character is, and encourages them to collect the rest of the line. Truly, it was a simpler and better time for toy collecting. I miss it when action figures had advertisements on the back telling you to buy the other figures. So if you're a packaged collector, these are a treat. Just pick up the set of 5 and hang them on the wall, and they look great. But for those of us that play with our toys and open them, we're in for an even bigger treasure, because the figures inside are, truth be told, quite amazing. I've actually owned a couple of these a few years ago, but they didn't have their accessories, so I'm really excited to open these all up and look at them. These toys have been sealed for 25 years, and now you're going to join me as we tear into them. Just like a worker ant would, digging through the dirt, we are now going to rip into these and discover the treasures inside. Okay, so we've got 5 figures to look at here. Of course, we have our lead, Z, and his best friend, Weaver, voiced by the great Sylvester Stallone, the lovely Princess Bala, and our 2 big bads, General Mandible and Colonel Cuddle. So a nice mix of good guys and bad guys. So I'm going to have a bit of fun here, and we're actually going to start off with our big bad himself, General Mandible, because Gene Hackman does such a phenomenal job voicing this character in the movie. I would actually say that General Mandible is one of my favorite animated villains of all time. I unironically say that. I love that he is a hard ass, and even though he is the head of the military, he's kind of aligned with the good guys, he's not really a twist villain. Like, you get right from the beginning that this guy is secretly evil. And I don't know about you all, but I'm really over the twist villain trope these days. I wish we could go back to, like, real bad guys. Like, just look at his character design and see how imposing and evil he is. Now, I do want to point out on the back here, this is a prototype version of the figure. They all look a little different on the back. So if you look at the base here, how it's kind of tan and has like rock work, here it's a lot more green with the rock work there. So these are a bit rough prototypes on the back. These almost look like hand-painted figures here. And what's interesting is I was hoping to find some photos of the prototypes. I looked online for any Toy Fair coverage. All I could find was one image from Toy Fair 1998, and unfortunately it was the final version of the figures on display, which is really unusual, because most of the time Toy Fair just has prototypes on display, so it seems maybe Playmates and DreamWorks just didn't have a lot of confidence in this line. I even looked through vintage Playmates catalogs from that year and other toy catalogs, and I could find nothing on these. So there was like 0 marketing budget put into these. And you'll see as we open them, these are toys for kids, but they're really collector figures. So before I tear it open one last time, looking at the card back, if you want to learn about General Mandible, you can pause the video, but I honestly think you should just see the movie, because Ants is solid, people. Ants is great. Look at that. So that new toy smell, you the viewer are not getting it, but there's like a big whiff of plastic I'm getting right now as this toy is freed from its plastic prison. Okay, so here's our first figure, and first impressions, the plastic is really thick. The figure's got a lot of heft to it, and I don't know, you don't really see toys with this type of build anymore. Something about the 90s, all the figures just felt inherently chunky. They all just had this kind of durable quality, like, I almost feel like you could drop an atomic bomb and these toys would survive. Fitting, because he's a bug, right? You know, bugs typically survive that type of thing. But, I mean, look at the head sculpt. It's a little off, you know, his eyes looking a little wonky there. But for the most part, this is like an exact recreation of the animation model. And I wish we could find out what went on with the design of these toys, because this comes from a more analog period in time where this stuff was usually sculpted by hand. If you look at a lot of animated figures from the same time, they usually look a bit off, but he looks really good. He looks just like the model. Articulation, the upper half of the body is what you'd expect. Basic 90s swivel, you know, very thick sonic welding. You know, the joints are really tough, almost too tough, like the arm doesn't even rotate all the way around. But the legs are actually ball-jointed, and these guys have 4 legs on them. They are a lot more accurate than Bugs Life in that respect. Not quite as anthropomorphic, and I really liked that about Ants, that the characters look as grotesque as the bugs would. Now, the accessories here, you get his riding crop that he whips his soldiers with, so he can be a hard-ass general like he is. And then you get his war helmet, of course, and there he is, ready for combat, or really ready to stand behind combat lines and mock his soldiers. So the bases that come with these are really cool. You get the Mega Tunnel opening day poster. This is kind of his big plan from the film, is the construction of this Mega Tunnel, and he can stand right there. He's a bit bigger than the banner. The banner is definitely undersized compared to the one in the film, but it gets the point across, and it does it all on a budget. These figures, I'm not sure what they retailed for back in the day, but I could tell you what, it was a lot cheaper than action figures today. Now, here's the cool part, is the collectible aspect of these. So I said these are more adult-oriented figures. They don't have any action features. There's no, like, you know, level on this guy. He doesn't come with any exciting weapons, but he does come with movie quotes that you can slide in here so that you could, like, you know, display this figure, I guess, at your office cubicle with your favorite Gene Hackman quote. The strong are meant to rise above the weak, you know? Just like that. Now, these quotes are all from the movie. I know Ants a little too well. This is my favorite. Conformity is a way of life. I think that's during one of his big speeches he gives, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to display that there. That is so great. Like, I wish other animated movies had action figures this nice. And, you know, I don't know what you're going to do with all these extra quotes, but I guess you could just, like, slip them under the base, right, if you're going to display these on a shelf. Just like that. So there's our bad guy. But what would a bad guy be without his henchmen? And we've got Colonel Cutter here, Christopher Walken. And spoiler alert for a 25-year-old movie, he becomes a good guy. He gets a great redemption arc. So there's the prototype there. And he is a flying ant, so he's got those cool wings. And let's crack him open. And here he is, a lot taller, a lot lankier than our other dude. Again, basic swivel articulation, but this one gets a little more because his wings are on ball joints, actually, so that's nice. And surprisingly, I forgot to mention the butts, like, all rotate on these. This is, like, a useless point of articulation. I have no idea why this is here, but I'm not complaining. And something I do really like about these figures, and I want to commend this, you don't see this in toy design today, is that all of the articulation is hidden into the design of the figure. So everywhere there's a cut on the animation model, like look at the abdomen here, that's where the swivel is, and the arms. So, like, even though he's not super articulated, he is articulated enough to where it doesn't hinder the design. If you look at a lot of the modern figures, they have so much articulation in, like, everywhere. They put, like, sometimes 2 or 3 along the chest. The figure almost looks like a robot. It's, like, too much articulation. I mean, how much do you really need these guys to do, right? They're just gonna look awesome on a shelf. And he'll look even more awesome with his, his kind of staff prodding rod here, and his aviator's helmet, because he is a flying ant. Okay, so that one was a little trickier to put on, but it does fit snugly there. And then his base is basic, it doesn't have a cool banner like our other dude. And the staff, honestly, doesn't quite fit in the hands. It just kind of sits there, but we do get some more quotes here. These are our quotes. You can imagine this in a Christopher Walken voice. We're a few seconds ahead of schedule. Okay, that's awful. I'm never going to do Christopher Walken again, but most people can do a pretty good Christopher Walken, so I'll let you imagine that. I like this one here, an idea is a dangerous thing. I like all these quotes about the film's message of, non-conformity and not quite wanting to fit in, and that's really not such a bad thing. Who wants to be a sheep? We all want to be unique, even if we're in a colony of identical ants. So those are our 2 bad guys. Bad guys always get the best part, and no exception here. Ants has some great villains. Okay, now to our heroes. Here we have Z, aka Woody Allen. Okay, so everyone's got some pretty mixed feelings about Woody Allen. He did some pretty messed up things, but you gotta separate the art from the artist, and he actually did a really good job as Z. I've always, related to this really anxious ant character. He's like, he just doesn't, like the colony. Like, he says that God's got a sense of humor because I don't really like people, but God decided to make me an ant. That's what you get. That's my Z impression. Okay, and here is Z, and just look at the nice detail on this figure. That is really cool. I actually have had this one before, but I don't have him with his accessories. So you get this awesome Walker's helmet that he wears in the movie, like that. And then you get the map of the Mega Tunnel. Look at that, a little paper map. And I bet you this was lost, in everyone's toy box. The only way to get this accessory, because it literally just is a piece of paper, is to buy the toy new. I mean, it doesn't even really fit in his hands. It's just kind of gonna sit there. But again, the figure is just perfect. It looks exactly like the character. The articulation is wonderful, and again, despite the character having a very spindly design, look how thin his legs are, the plastic doesn't feel rubbery like some toys today. If you've ever bought any G.I. Joe classifieds, sometimes the guns and weapons they come with, well, honestly, always the guns and weapons they come with have this, rubber quality. I think it's just because the price of plastic has gone way up, especially in the 2010s. I know it, skyrocketed, and they just make toys with either a cheaper plastic or less plastic. I don't really know this industry stuff, but something about figures from this time just feel thick. They've got a lot of heft to them. And, of course, he's going to have some great lines. I was not cut out to be a walker. And then, Trouble's my middle name. I'm insignificant, but with attitude. And, of course, my favorite, the whole system just makes me feel insignificant. I think that's when he's talking to his therapist in the opening scene of the movie. We're going to go with all the anxiety quotes for these characters. And there is Z, the hero himself. Okay, we're almost there. We only have 2 more figures. And where would Z be without the trusty Reavor, played by Sylvester Stallone? Another one of my favorite characters in the film. I think I actually like him more than Z. He's just such an awesome, Chad ant. And what's great is if you look at his design, with the big, broad pecs right in the muscles, he looks like an every animated movie, he would be the bad guy or the bully. He's got such a villain design with that chiseled chin, but he's actually a good guy, and he stands up for Z. He's kind of like his little bodyguard friend, and I always loved that dynamic. It's great when you see a character design like this, and it subverts it, you know? And it fits Sylvester Stallone perfectly. And this movie, I know I keep saying it, but it's got a stacked cast. Everyone just does such a great job, and they got so many amazing people to collaborate on the first DreamWorks movie. And here is Weevil, definitely the biggest of the figure. This guy is almost like 7 inches tall from stem to foot. He is chunky and big, and yeah, he just fits the line perfectly. You know, those 90s proportions, like he looks like a Street Shark or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Again, if this was made today, they wouldn't be the same. Like, this guy would be sold as a deluxe figure and not in the basic line. But he is just the Chad Ant for sure. I just love, like, playing with these figures. So many collector figures have this brittle feel to them, and this is just like a nice figure. I wish we would go back to this, just like clean, solid design. And these figures are not, again, they're not kids' figures. They're not hindered by, like, buttons and action features and stuff like that. They're just fun toys. And we have some cool accessories with him. Of course, we have to get his Walker helmet. Just like that, you know, fits really nicely between those antennas. And what would Weevil be without his tools so he can play Minecraft? He's got his pickaxe, and he's got his kind of spear here. And they don't seem to fit perfectly unless... yeah, they just kind of sit there, so... that's like one minor gripe, is the accessories just don't click in these figures' hands as well as you would expect them to. Yeah, they don't really fit. You could just like set them on the base behind them, and it would just make for a nice environmental display. Now, of course, we have to get some awesome quotes for the figure. I just love the work. Nobody told me digging was so much fun. Big guy coming through. And we ants are running the show. This is actually my favorite because this is the trailer line. If you've seen the classic theatrical trailer, look it up on YouTube. This is the line they decided to use. Okay, we're almost done. We only have one more figure, and that is the lovely Princess Bala. She can stop any ant in his tracks. And then there's the prototype on the back. A little bit more detail in the, looks like the clothing than on the... oh no, the detail's pretty good there. The prototype honestly doesn't look too much different. Usually the prototypes look a lot better, but in this case, they came pretty good. They just ended up changing the base. And here we have the lovely Princess Bala. Again, a beautiful sculpt here. Something I always loved about this design is that they did not overly, like, humanize or sexualize her. They just kept her as, like, a beautiful ant. People say the characters in this film look grotesque, but I think they look natural. Like, it's a movie about ants in the dirt. And I always loved how, in contrast to Bug's Life, that kind of makes the insects look overly cute and cartoony, this film opted for something different, something more realistic you wouldn't expect for a cartoon. I mean, look at the outfit, how it's made of these leaves. Now, this outfit, she wears it, like, very briefly in the movie. As soon as she gets on, like, the adventure, it is removed, so you may actually think she looks better displayed without it, so you can see more of the lovely sculpt. And yeah, she is quite beautiful. And fitting with the movie's subversive themes, I always loved how Bala initially chases Z. She's the one that gets the whole ball rolling. You know, she teases him at the club and dances with him. So, really, she has nobody to blame but herself. If she had just decided to stay home at the beginning and not lure a guy out, none of this would have happened. You know, it really isn't Z's fault. Like, poor dude thought he actually had a chance with the princess, and, you know, as it turns out, one adventure later, he does have a chance with her, and they end up together and have a beautiful, blossoming romance. A very unique female character. Especially at the time, she's not your typical, like, nice fairy tale princess. She's actually really mean and harsh to the character of Z, and maybe that just kind of set the tone that DreamWorks was going to have alternative characters. Like, when you look at her compared to other DreamWorks female leads, like, Lola and Angie later in Shark Tale, and even down the road, characters like Diane Foxington. Yeah, she was like the template for the spunky, sassy attitude female character with a little bit of a mean streak. And she's got some quotes here. Oh, they're falling over, people. One by one, the ants fall over. But if we can just get them to stand up. She only came with 3 quotes, as opposed to the rest that came with 4. Maybe that was just a mistake with mine, like it was missing one. I looked everywhere through the packaging, it just wasn't there. And if I worked that hard, I just know I'd break a nail. How do you expect me to act? I'm a princess, and wow, this place is so gritty. They just didn't have a lot of lines to choose from, because she's pretty mean. We're gonna go with, if I worked that hard, I'd break a nail. That's funny, because, like, do ants even have nails? I have no idea, but that's all 4 figures. Let's get these situated under some better lighting so we can look at them. Ants came at the end of the 1990s, and it would be a prediction of the decade to come. It had cutting-edge computer graphics. It had alternative and edgy storytelling. And like the movie, the toys predicted the decade that followed. These figures belong way more in the 2000s than they do the late 90s. They are beautifully detailed adult collector figures for an animated film. The lack of play features and focus on detail, movie-accurate accessories, and a larger 6-inch scale truly set this set of figures aside from its contemporaries. It is much more believable to tell me a set of figures like this would have been produced in 2005 or 6 than 1998. It's an easy set to complete, and it makes for a great addition to any DreamWorks-themed collection. The only notable absence in the movie is Weaver's girlfriend, Anteca, played by a then-unknown Jennifer Lopez. But other than that, the line is pretty much complete. The only other additional figure I found was actually a silver-plated figure of Z. I noticed this while watching the Making of Shrek featurette on the original DVD. I caught it on one of the animator's desk. Couldn't find much information on this, but it definitely seems to be a cast and crew item, but that mold is obviously the Playmates figure. There's no doubt about that. So maybe Playmates just cast a couple of these in pewter metal or just chrome plated them, gave them out as cast and crew gifts, but either way, I don't really count that as part of the set. But if you're an Ants diehard, just know there is one additional figure out there. So to conclude, what happened? Why was Ants not a massive marketing success? Well, the movie made money at the box office, and the blame lays more on the licensors than DreamWorks. Stuff like this takes years to get out to market. If companies believed in Ants, they would have made a massive toy line. I mean, the 90s was the age of cartoons. Even unsuccessful movies had huge toy lines, So it's possible licensees just looked at the movie and they saw its unsettling character designs and its edgy humor. Keep in mind, this film is a bit darker than other DreamWorks films. Another theory I have is that DreamWorks themselves may have torpedoed the toy license for this line. You could not escape Bug's Life in '98. It was everywhere. It was a bonanza. Pixar kind of missed the boat on Toy Story, and they were not going to miss it with Bug's Life. It was inescapable. And DreamWorks was new. They were trying to make a name for themselves, so maybe they avoided Ants merchandise because they didn't want to get into too much trouble with Disney. It would have looked pretty obvious what they were doing if there was a massive wall of Ants merchandise directly adjacent to Bug's Life. So, they scaled Ants back, they kept it small, and they kind of waited for Shrek later on to be the big licensing juggernaut. What is interesting is that all the other DreamWorks stuff from '98 had toys. Small Soldiers had a huge toy line. Prince of Egypt had toys. Even Polly had toys. Yeah, bet you didn't know that DreamWorks movie Polly had a toy line, but it did. So it does seem like the decision to not make Ants a merchandising thing was a deliberate choice, but what do I know? I'm just a guy collecting the toys. But I can tell you, as a consumer of this stuff, I am really happy with my Ants figures. This is an easy to collect set. You can find it on the secondhand market for pennies on the dollar. These are worthless figures, which is such a shame because they're so awesome. I mean, just look at all the footage I'm showing you of them outside. Don't they just look great when they're placed in nature? Imagine the photo and posing opportunities with these toys. So there you have it, the very small but still notable and impactful line of Ants toys. If there's any takeaway I can have from collecting this line, it's that no matter how small and how insignificant an ant may be, you can never count the little guy out. Thanks for watching, and have a happily ever after.